Thanks for joining us once again. I'm AAA, and I'm here with Jason with the Animal Warriors of the Kingdom, a fantastic line that's out there right now that is really moving towards my top line, as I spoke about in some of my other videos. Jason, how did you start working with this line?
I was actually doing graphic design over a decade ago, and one week I was doing zoo stuff, and at the end of the week I was kind of cleaning up my desk, and I had a bunch of animal drawings, and I thought, it might be kind of fun to tell the hero's tale through an animal perspective. And then I was thinking about kind of the island of Dr. Moreau and, He-Man or Thundercats and all the stuff that I loved, and I thought, this could scratch my creative itch, so to speak. And so I started working on the comic book, and while I was doing the comic book and doing the character design, I thought, let me design the characters in a way that would make them fun action figures if that would somehow happen. Yeah, and that's kind of how we kind of started the journey of Animal Warriors of the Kingdom.
So now, how far into the story making process did you get into before the figures started to come more to fruition?
So I actually finished the first graphic novel before even trying to pitch the toys. I think I finished it in 2013, and then I really kind of worked away at it and didn't try a Kickstarter until 2016. And at the time, that was a 3 3/4 inch line. And that one actually didn't make goal. And, for about 3 weeks, I was really bummed out. And then I thought, the worst happened. It failed. So, at least I know what that feels like. And I learned a lot. And I basically went back to the drawing board. And a year later, after learning how to use social media correctly and resculpting everything, essentially, we did another Kickstarter. And that Kickstarter was successful. And then we followed up and did 3 3/4 inch figures that were bigger and bulkier, since in the comic there's a bunch of different size animals. And around the time that we were wanting to do Toy Fair to kind of really promote and try to get brand awareness and the product into comic shops, COVID happened. And so that gave us a little extra, it gave me a little extra time and frankly money, because it got canceled, to think about how things had started to shift to the 6-inch line. And I was already friends with all these great sculptors, and being in lockdown, I was on Instagram a lot, and I saw this other artist named Utoma, and him and I just really clicked, and we decided to reboot the comic and then reboot the figure line as a 6-inch figure line. So we kind of worked on it for about 6 months, and then we launched the Kickstarter, and I really had no expectation as far as what was going to happen. And it was so much more successful than we had planned for. We actually went through every stretch goal that I had planned for, which was ideal.
Wow.
And then since then, we've done 2 more waves of figures outside of the Kickstarter using our existing tooling portfolio, or our parts portfolio.
Okay.
And so, last year we decided, we really do need to do another Kickstarter, not necessarily to keep doing waves of parts that we already have, but in order to really quadruple our parts library. So during that Kickstarter, we did a brawler body, we did a speedster body, a reptile body, a female body, and then birds. So we've just got a ton of potential.
So crazy cool.
Right, and it's funny, during the Kickstarter, you're like, oh, this is so amazing and exciting and everything, and then after the Kickstarter stops, really go to work. So we've been, as soon as the Kickstarter stopped, we essentially went into development with Wave 1. At first, we were going to do the brawlers and the lizards in Wave 1, but we realized that it was just a little too much for our factory. So we broke it into 2 parts, and they're currently finishing up the tooling on the bigger bodies right now. So we're super excited. I mean, I can't wait to play with them just as much as you guys. It's like, you're thinking about it for years, and now you kind of get to, it comes to fruition. So that's currently what we're working on, and we're wrapping up at Toylanta, which has been just a fantastic show. I hope you guys had fun.
We did.
Well.
We've had
so
a
much
blast
fun
here. Yeah.
It really is great. Yep.
And it's great community.
Absolutely, it is. Yes.
When you were a kid, what was the toy line that you were the most excited about and that you collected?
I think it all started with Star Wars. I've told the story a couple times. I distinctly remember having swimming lessons and kind of getting out of the pool and going to meet my parents, and they're all sitting around the table, and there was this little white thing on the table, and I kind of picked it up, and I was like, what is this? And they're like, it's a stormtrooper. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. And I just fell in love with toys. And then growing up, I think Masters of the Universe was just a huge inspiration for me. I still remember going home after school and watching all the cartoons, and Transformers was fun, but I think He-Man and Thundercats and Ninja Turtles were just my jam. And then later on, I did get a little bit of G.I. Joes and everything, but as I got a little bit older, G.I. Joes became my real focus, and I would always pair the G.I. Joes with my Star Wars vehicles because I had way more Star Wars vehicles than toys.
Well, especially you were Power of the Force era like I was.
I mean, you know what? Return of the Jedi was the first movie I remember growing up and like seeing in the theater and just having like the walls of like Jedi toys. Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but those are the lines that really stood out. I loved Voltron. I can remember getting like Super Friends for Christmas, and me and my parents still laugh. I got Soundwave one year, and my mom was like, "I don't understand why it's not playing," and I was like, "It's just a toy, Mom. It's not really gonna play,
That's so really good.
She's like, "I really thought it played," and I was like, and I'm like probably 7 at the time. I'm like, "No, it's just a toy, The cassette turns into a bird. It's definitely not gonna play,
But I understand the confusion as a parent because it's just like normally you just have little boom boxes. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So now, how did that translate into some of the toy line as it is now?
I think whenever I was doing character design, I really enjoyed the fact that Masters seemed to kind of break the rules of color. They'd find a way to make pink and orange actually work on a figure, which you never think that. Like you go to art school and you're like, that's a full color. You're not making that work, but somehow they did. And that kind of inspiration really gave me permission to just kind of go wild and express myself through the color palette. So whenever you see the Paint Masters, I do all those Paint Masters, and I tend to think about them for several days before I ever actually mock anything up in Photoshop or put anything on the actual figures. So I just really get a kick out of people whenever they come and see them in person and they talk about how the colors really pop and how fun they are.
Yeah, because like the character that I picked up today, which is, you call him Ken?
I call him Ken, but his formal name's Akin.
Okay, Akin.
Ahaken.
Ahaken, because Ahaken has that yellow and that teal, which is not normally something that you would see together with like that brown, but it works. Like it's
something
pops.
fun. Yeah. I mean that the Aztec and Mayans just love that turquoise, and I think turquoise and teal are probably my favorite colors. So I try to
kind of see on some of the line.
It's very prevalent throughout the line. The main bad guys, their colors are teal. The good guys have like a little bit of accent teals kind of peppered here and there. And as you expand into the story, we'll start to meet other great animal houses, and then you start to see the different colors. So all the canines really kind of lean heavily into cooler colors that are like purples and a little bit darker blues and grays and stuff. So as you get to a different nation or a different animal house, you'll really know that, we're kind of veering in or exploring a new culture because their color palette will change. So that way the kids looking at the comic, they're not like, hey, are they in the same area? Like they'll visually be able to tell.
And then that leads into the way that you distinguish, which I think is phenomenal.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Now, what toy lines or what things as a more grown-up kid do you collect now?
So, I think G.I. Joe Classifieds is probably my consistent favorite. I feel like they just have such a great track record of like it's just all home runs. There's very few that I'm not very compelled to at least army build or get one or two. Even hero or champion characters like Duke, I'll have 2 Dukes, and of course everyone tends to like get multiple Snake Eyes, which is a given.
Right.
But the army builders are so good, and I think a line that people have kind of slept on is the Masterverse. So
that's my favorite. Again and again, I talk about how Masterverse is my favorite line.
And I actually find that it pairs so well with our line.
It does. Like
it just goes so well.
My display shelf at the house is literally Masterverse.
Right.
And then on the L, it's Warriors.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
Because it looked like there is a logical shift because it's like literally Catra is standing next to what's the individual like that's like the Switch.
Oh, we would joke and call him the Nintendo Switch cat. He's Cordoon. So Cordoon's like our master of arms.
And so it literally it's like her and then him and it works because you start to think about like Stinkor and some of these other characters where they're anthropomorphic, but just they work. And the armor sets that you choose to illustrate and put on the figures fit that little bit of fantasy aesthetic with it being technologic, with
Right.
it being historical.
Yeah, and I think whenever, again, during lockdown, I had a lot of time to kind of think about what do I want in our sandbox. So I really tried to think out, why is there this weird chimera or like dinosaur looking thing? So when you read the comic book, it very quickly sets up, about halfway through the first issue, why we are seeing, anthropomorphic characters and why we're seeing these weird creatures that are like roaming around. And of course, there's like a lot of people miss it the first read through, but there's a bunch of humans in the first issue, and I don't want to spoil too much, but I'm working on the second story arc, and there's a bunch of humans in the second story arc. So it's the kind of thing where like I'm as a creator really anxious to start dipping my toe into working on human figures. So we kind of did like the reverse with Masters, where they were very human heavy and then like sprinkling in a little bit of animals, and we kind of did the reverse. So it is fun to kind of put your own spin on things that you love, and I really feel like the comic is it is the hero's tale and a little bit of a love letter to the island of Dr. Moreau and a little bit of Twilight Zone.
So yeah, thank you so much, Jason, for joining me
thank you for
today.
having me. I really
Excited
appreciate
to
it.
connect with you on Instagram, on your new YouTube stuff.
Sure.
Really excited about the next waves. We will continue bringing you more and more reviews of the toys, as well as what I know you're hoping for, some retro redos. We will have some
Nice.
commercials for the Animals of Warrior Kingdom coming at you here in the next
man,
2
I love it.
weeks.
That sounds awesome.
So